Now let's talk about how the real factor prices are determined. With the CD function in front of us, then we can derive the the mathematical expression for the real wage and the real rental price. Okay, and here we said we discussed previously that real wage equals marginal product of labor, right? MPL. Now, marginal product of labor can be written out with this exponent function, okay, or exponential function, and this would be equal to, when we change our labor by 1 unit, and how many units of output would change as a response. Okay, mathematically this is so-called partial derivative. Okay, something you should learn from your calculus class. Now, why it's partial derivative? Because in this function we have capital N labor, two independent variables. Okay, so when we change labor input, we hold the capital constant. Okay, that's why here we said this is a partial. Okay, you can take this as a partial contribution of labor to output. Okay, all right. Now, how to take partial derivative? If you already forgot, how to do this, or you never tried this before, come to our virtual meeting, and I'm gonna give you this worksheet number 5, where we would show you step by step how to take partial derivative. Okay. Now here, you can just take this math as given. Okay, when we move forward on this video. So basically, when we look at this CD function, for the parts or the items without L, without labor, because we said that we're going to hold them constant, so we just simply copy them here, AK to the power of alpha. Okay, for the part with L, like L to the power of 1 minus alpha, what we're going to do is we're going to copy this exponent and put it to the front as the constant here, 1 minus alpha. Okay, and then for the exponent we lead to minus 1. Okay, so it's 1 minus alpha minus 1, and then we find that here 1 and the minus 1 will be cancelled out, so what's left as an exponent of the labor would be just minus alpha. All right, and because minus alpha, L to the power of minus alpha equals 1 over L to the power of alpha. Okay, in other words, we would say here minus alpha equals, let me write it here, equals minus 1 times alpha. Okay, so here this guy equals minus 1 times alpha. Okay, and L to the power of minus 1, that will be 1 over L. Okay, and then to the power of alpha. So eventually we're going to combine these two, because it's k to the alpha to the power of alpha times 1 over L to the power of alpha. So we combine these two and get k over L to the power of alpha. Okay, so this is the expression for real wage. Okay, in the real rental price, we're just gonna do the similar thing. Okay, now this time remember, because we're trying to find marginal product of capital, so the capital becomes a variable. Okay, it can be changed, and labor is held constant. So we take the partial derivative of y with respect to k. All right, and here we're gonna keep here uppercase letter A and L to the power of 1 minus alpha the same, because there's no k in these parts, right? But for the k to the power of alpha, we're gonna take the exponent and put it, copy it to the front as a constant, okay, and then the exponent itself would -1, okay, and so we're gonna get alpha times a times k to the power of alpha minus 1 times l to the power of 1 minus alpha, okay. Here the trick we're gonna do is this 1 alpha minus 1, because the alpha and the beta here, I think I should write it here, alpha and the beta, they range between 0 and 1, okay. So alpha minus 1 would be a negative, would be a minus. Then what we would do is we're gonna say, k to k to the power of alpha minus 1 equals k to the power of -1 minus alpha, okay. And so if you open the brackets, you will find this is just -1 plus alpha, so that's exactly the same as here. And then because there's a minus sign, so what we could do is we're gonna say it equals k 1 over k, okay, to the power of 1 minus alpha. All right, and now you find this exponent and this exponent of labor are the same, so we can combine these two, okay, or the base, and then we get L times 1 over k, so it's L over k, right? So this is the for the real rental price, okay. And now we are trying to figure out, if we want to increase in the real wage, okay, let's say to increase in W over P, what we could do, okay. Now from this mathematical expression, we find that we could increase in capital, right? Or we could decrease in labor, so this ratio would be greater, right? Or we can also increase A, which is the technology, okay? Or of course you can do a combination of these strategies as well, right? So that's how we're gonna increase the real wage. To increase the real rental price, R over P, to increase that, then what we should do here is we can increase the amount of labor in production, or we can decrease amount of capital, okay, or we can increase technologies, right? These strategies would lead to an increase in real rental price, okay. Now let's check out a real world example here. In September 2018, Hurricane Florence swept Carolina shores, which resulted in a catastrophic flooding that submerged hundreds of factories and machineries, okay. Now here, what's going to happen to the real wage and the real rental price? That's what we need to figure out, okay. Now from the question itself, because it says that it submerged or destroyed hundreds of factories and machineries, so we know that the capital stock would decrease in this case, right? And it doesn't say anything about people missing or died from this the hurricane, so we could safely it's safe for us to say that L stays the same, okay. L is unchanged, all right. When you deal with these examples, especially on the test, just stick with what the question provides with you, okay. Do not overthink. Do not assume that there might be, for example, in this case, some people missing or died, right? And if it's not mentioned, then it's not happening. Okay. And so here what we find is, because K is lower, so the ratio K over L would be lower, right? And then the whole thing would be lower. So the real wage decreases. All right. And in the second case, because K is lower, so L over K is actually becomes larger, right? Or greater. And then we find the whole thing is getting bigger. So the real rental price is actually increasing. All right. So this is the mathematical analysis. Okay. Now the next thing we're going to check out is a graphical thing. Okay. Now here, the effects of the flood on the real wage. Again, we put the W over P here, and put the quantity of labor here, and we find that this is the labor demand curve. As we said before, it's also the marginal product of labor curve, right? In the quantity of labor, we said it's going to be a vertical line because the labor input is fixed by assumption, right? So here, that's the first or the initial rental, the real wage. Okay, and this is the quantity of labor. Now, intuitively, we would say that because the factories and machineries get destroyed, so for the workers, their numbers stays the same, but in front of each worker there would be fewer units of capital or machinery, equipment, or tools they can work with. So each worker becomes less productive. Okay. Again, then we find that the labor demand or the marginal product of labor would shift downwards. Okay. Let me show you this. There would be a downward shift of if this is a 1, then this would be 2. Okay, of the labor demand curve, because of the flood. All right, and then that's why we find here the new intersection between the demand curve and the supply curve, and so this will be the new real wage, number 2. Okay, so if this is the initial equilibrium, this will be the new equilibrium, and the market is moving this way. Okay. All right, again, the most important thing here is the economic intuition. Okay, because there are fewer units of capital, so each worker becomes less productive, and the quantity of worker doesn't change, so you're not supposed to move along the curve. Instead, we need to downward shift the curve. All right. Now let's check out what is going to happen on the capital market. Okay. Again, the vertical axis would be the real rental price, and here would be the quantity of capital, and we got this downward sloping, KD, okay, capital demand curve, which is also MPK curve, right? And we have this the vertical supply curve, K bar, okay, because the input is given, and then the initial real rental price would be here. Okay, and let's say this is a point A. Now, because of the flooding, we find the quantity of capital decreases. So here we're supposed to end up with a lower input of capital. So if this is a K1 bar, okay, then we're gonna use a different color for the effect of the flood. So this is gonna be K2 bar. Again, it's supposed to be vertical. Okay, I did this poorly, sorry about that. So here it will be the new real rental price, okay, and this will be the new equilibrium. So we find it's moving up along the curve because of the law of diminishing returns to capital.